So we have this thing at our dinner table. Unless unforeseen circumstances arise, when we get together at night, we have a meal around our table, not in the cars we drive. We sit down as a family, all crazy five of us, and have a meal. And what's happened over time is that our daughters have started prompting, and it was from our middle child, Roxy. She was like, "All right, Daddy, how was your day?" And then I would start talking, then somebody else would interrupt, and she said, "Oh, no, no, no. Daddy's talking right now." And then she would go around and she would make sure everyone to talk about what were the highlights of your day. Was there anything tough? I mean, she was super concerned. She wanted to know all this stuff. I think there was an ulterior motive that she just wanted to get to what she did and then talk about that. But we talked about the day, and so it has evolved into now. My wife had all these cards that she had. She's a teacher, and so she had all these cards that started conversation about different questions that she uses at the end of the day for her class as they're getting ready to wrap up, to everybody to connect with people. And so those cards have made their way home, and they sit in the middle of the table, and when it comes to dinner time, whoever's turn it is to lead the questions will take the cards out and we'll go around and answer those. Friday night, while my wife was out of town, we went out to dinner, and then we came home, and then our daughters were like, "Hey, Daddy, we didn't do the questions." And so for me, I was like, who cares about the questions? But we're like, no, we need to sit down and do the questions. And it led to, as we're going around and we do a few of those, and then Roxy stops us, our middle child. She's 6 years old. She said, "Daddy, we need to ask the question." And I'm like, okay, where's this going to go? Because I'm not quite sure if this is going to be, why do fish have scales? Or, Daddy, my body made this noise. Can you tell me about it? Like, I'm not sure where this is going to go. And so whatever. And so she asked, she said, "Daddy, we need to answer, and all of us can do it, like, what are like the best things in life?" And I'm like, who are you? Like Socrates? Like, what is happening here? And all of a sudden, all I could picture in my mind was like that statue of the thinker and everything. I'm like, where did she get this stuff? And so we start going around the table, and we start off first with our youngest daughter, Kinley, who usually just goes, "Blah, blah, blah," and whatever, and then they make up what she says. And then it goes to our oldest daughter, Chloe, and she starts talking about, well, the things that are going to make up life that'll be so amazing is I'm going to have a tiny house, and and so you guys are going to buy it, and then we're going to put it, we have plenty of room, we got rid of the shed, and so we have this open space, we're going to put it in the backyard, and then we'll run electricity so I don't have to pay for it, and so that'll be way better. And then I'm going to get a job, but not a big job because I need a lot of time, and then I'm going to have a YouTube channel, and then people are going to watch me, and then that's how I'll make money, and then I'll go out. And she's just going on, and finally Roxy's like, "You're done, you're done." And so I'm like, thank you, Jesus. And so then it gets to me, and I just start talking about, well, it makes up, and I, say the adult answers, that family and what makes it up, church, and all these things. And then we get to Roxy, and Roxy's like, well, first off, I'm going to find the biggest unicorn that I can. And I'm like, that's interesting. I said, where have you seen a unicorn? She's like, in my dreams. I'm like, okay, so you're going to go. She said, I'm going to capture it in my dreams, and then I'm going to get it. And then we're going to, like I said, so now this leads to a whole thing. I'm like, how are you going to capture it? She's like, well, in my dreams, I'm awesome. And I was like, well, so you're not awesome in real life? She said, Daddy, I'm awesome in real life too. But that's only where the unicorn is. It's in my dream. And she starts unpacking all this stuff. And I was like, well, what holds? And then eventually at the end, and she says the sweetest answer when we go through all this. She's like, and the thing that's so awesome is Chloe will live in the backyard in the tiny house. You and Mommy are there. Kinley, I don't know what Kinley's going to do. And then I'll live here. And I was like, oh, you're going to live here? She's like, yeah, I'm not going anywhere. And I'm like, no, you going somewhere. You're going to go somewhere and not here. We love you, but you can't stay here. Hit 18. Thump. And she goes, no, because I love being around you guys. And I'm like, you can stay here forever. I love you. It was a fleeting moment. I was yelling at her like 10 minutes later about something that happened. So that she... Actually, that night in particular, the next night when we're praying and she prayed, she started to wander around the kitchen as she prayed, and she just starts walking up to family members. So Chloe's head bound. She starts caressing her sister. I'm like, yeah, we don't do that. That's not she was like, I just wanted to touch her. I'm like, yeah, so that's a little weird. During the prayer, just wander around, just caressing people. Just need a camera crew, then I wouldn't need this job. Just saying. And so it is with life. I think there's a lot of things, we get in that conversation that make up our existence, that make up who we are and what we're a part of. And we try to fill life with all sorts of things. And I started writing down some of the things that honestly, it's been a crazy week. My wife went to a women's conference for a couple days, and so our home turned much into like Lord of the Flies, and walked through a situation with a friend that was dealing with some heavy stuff, and so we've been texting back and forth. They're out of state, and got news that that someone that attended here that was a part of this had passed away this week, and so walking through that with their family, and it's just a real heavy situation of loss. And I was thinking, like, what makes up life? And so I started writing down some of the things that would fill our jar, just at, kind of at random. Patience would be part of the thing that makes up life. Regret. We have, pain. Happiness is part of what makes up life. We have church. Some of you guys are here and a part of that. And love, prayer, work. I mean, we could go on and on reading the Bible. I wrote down this because it was pretty pertinent to this week: death. Something that we don't want to just sit and I think it would be a little morbid to sit around and be like, I want to think about death, but the reality is that happens. Shame. Don't know how many times people have walked through the door or emailed us and said, I've been listening to your podcast, or I've been listening and watching through the mobile app, and I didn't want to come because I feel ashamed. There's things that make up that just the unknown. Those things that go into our jar that we're just not sure about. Family, relationships, and even in some of those moments, there's a little bit of joy. All those things make up our existence, and there's plenty more. We could take tons of time to talk about the things that go into life, that fill us up, that move through this existence. But what is it that holds all that together? For my daughters, for Roxy, it was a unicorn. For Chloe, whatever would hold it together is however she could make the littlest amount of money and have other people pay for it. And that was her thing. And so good for her, shooting for the stars. There's going to be a reality check eventually with that. And we have all these things that fill in the things that fill up in your jar. While many of us would have some of the same things in life, as we sail through this journey, there are some things that are unique to you. Situations that, while someone may have encountered something that was a little bit similar, there's something about it that's unique, that's only your story. But how does all this hold together in life? It's not by the shell that we call humanity. I would contend that there's plenty of room inside this existence to fill up all the cracks, the glue, if you will, that holds all of this together and fits it in. And I would say that this glue, this moment that fills up the empty spaces is faith. The faith to move in ways that honestly we're just not sure about. There was that one ball there, the unknown. And I think a lot of us, I would venture to say all of us at some point in time have wrestled with that one. As we throw that into our jar and we think about the unknown, what is going to go on in life? Am I going to amount to anything? Am I going to be as good as, and then fill in the blank? Because we don't ever want to say out loud that we compare ourselves to other people, but then internally and in the quiet recesses of places that we don't say out loud, we look at the next door neighbor, and we look at our coworkers. We look at other people as they walk through the door, and we size up their life. And there's a general humanity piece that we see in that's not wrong, but it's when we start going, I wish I had what they had. And I'm a little unsure about what's going to take place with my relationships and with God, and if he is going to forgive me, which we would say here that, as the Bible records, is that you and I have been forgiven. It's a matter of whether or not we're going to step in faith and fill in the cracks of faith with what God says is true for you and I, cementing our relationship with him. We kicked off this series last week, Life Adrift, and the reality is that for most of us, we are wanting desperately to move in a place and hit the target that God has set forth in our life. That we want to be the man or woman that God has told us, designed us, and moved in us to be. And we want to hit that target, whether it be with our joy, with our occupation, with our family, with our goals, that we would dive into the narrative and account that God has given us in the Bible, and we go, I want my life to echo and mirror that. But the truth is, it's difficult. And I love this chapter that we're going to open up in the New Testament of the Bible. It's in the book of Hebrews. It's in chapter 11. And if you have a Bible, you can open that up there. If you don't have a Bible, we give them away for free at the Get Connected table in the lobby. You can also download a Bible app on your mobile device. It's very easy to do if you don't want to carry around another thing. Or you could download the Forefront Church app. We're a little biased, but we think it's one of the best ways because you're able to bring up the notes section of what we talk about each week. You can keep up with messages that happen. We also send out push notifications pretty regularly about things that are happening here, ways to encourage you. And so don't be the person that just like turn off notifications. We would love to just be able to send things to you just to say, hey, we're praying for you today. We want you to know that we care for you, and we hope you're having an amazing week. And we use all these tools to be able to connect back to God because we want to make sure that we drive home our faith. This faith, for some of us, we're still cultivating. I tell the band and the volunteers that are in here, for many of you, you're still trying to figure out what that is, and so you live off the faith of these guys. As you watch them and as you hear them sing and hear them play, you go, I'm just coming in to try to take this in because I don't know where I stand. But how do we get to a place where that cements us in who we are so that we don't drift away to things that are untrue, to believe the lies about the unknown and about regret and shame and death and all these things that happen, that we wouldn't gravitate toward those, but instead be rooted in who God designed us to be, to lay down an anchor. And over in Hebrews chapter 11, we catch up, and there's this guy named Paul, and he's a church planter. Forefront is a church plant. There were guys that came, moved to the area, started the church, and people started to come. And Paul is one of those guys. He goes around planting churches during that time, and then he would write letters back to be able to share and encourage and sometimes be that parent. You know, the parent that none of us ever really want to be. And so if you're in middle school or high school, we never want to be that way, all right? Like your parents, when they're like getting on to you, they're never thinking in the morning, man, I just can't wait to yell at my kid. Like but Paul is having some moments where he's like, hey, I want to encourage you. And then there's other times where, God, I have to tell you, like, this isn't good for you. And he jumps in this chapter, and this chapter is so encouraging about what does it mean to live out faith, to take all the pieces of life and cement them together with God. Starts off in verse 1 of chapter 11 in Hebrews. If you don't have a Bible, it'll be here on the screen. It says, faith is the confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. We could sit in that for like the rest of the year, like just that one verse. Like, what does that even mean, to have assurance of what we do not see? I encounter people all the time that say, like, Jason, I'm just having a really hard time in trusting God. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I unpack it, try the best I can very simply. And usually we'll be in a room somewhere where we're talking or whatever, or they'll have a device on them. And so if we're in a room where it's not like in the middle of Starbucks where they're going to get in trouble, I'm like, hey, go over there and flip that light switch. Like, what are you talking about? I said, go flip the light switch. And they're like, oh, okay. And they'll do it, and the light will come on. They'll be like, okay, what? And I'm like, you didn't, not for a second, and you're traversing the room and going over there, you think, man, I'm really struggling with whether or not this light's going to come on. Like you thought, like as soon as you wake up in the morning and you put the key in the ignition and you turn it, and for some of you, depending on how old your car is, because I know I've had some hoopties in my day, that you turn it, that you expect that the what? It's going to start. It's going to come on, okay? Like that's going to happen in the same way, but what we're doing in that, and this, your and my reaction and assumption is faith. It's going, I believe that this key going into this keyhole, or for you, if you have those fancy schmancy things where you just press a button, I ain't there yet, okay? I don't make that kind of money. And so, like, you get in and let's just say, for instance, we're all in that boat, okay? The blue collar, we're just struggling to get by boat. And we turn that key. We're making the assumption and putting faith in that key was made for that car and that assembly line was done up of the proper machinery and individuals that put the car together, and that the people that made it put in the right fluids and did the right checkups and put gas and all these things, so that when that key went, we're putting faith in a myriad of things. Just in the same way, when we're sitting inside of a house and we go and we flip the light on, we're trusting that someone paid the electric bill. We have faith in that. We have faith that the builder of the house installed it in such a way that when we flip that light, that it would come. We have faith that that light bulb that we installed just the other day was screwed in properly. All steps of what? Faith. And so if we can trust a maker of a car and a key and a vehicle or a light switch and the builder, then why would it be so extreme to say that we could trust the one who made the people that made the decisions to build the things? Because he was the ultimate creator. That he made that person that invented that car that then eventually morphed into the thing where all you have to do is be in proximity and press a little button and then it can move. And if we can trust all of that, then why is it such a leap to say, I'm going to trust the one that made the DNA of the individual? It's not as far-fetched as we would say, because we make faith choices every day. This is what the ancients were commended for. By faith, we understand that the universe was formed at God's command. Now, we don't have to get into the midst of how that happened, whether you believe in a literal 7 days or a figurative 7 days, or you believe some concoction of all things. What we believe here at Forefront Church on a grander scale is that God is the one that put things into place. That he, by his hands, orchestrated the account of making sure that from nothing became something, and that he was a part. So that was what was seen was made out of what was visible. But I wonder if we give ourselves room to doubt. Have you ever given yourself permission to go, am I allowed to question that? Am I allowed to walk through this existence and go, I'm not sure if that's right or true or valid or whatever. I need to research that more. I love the way that Tim Keller puts it in his book, Prodigal God. He shares it this way. He says, believers should acknowledge and wrestle with doubts. It is no longer sufficient to hold beliefs just because you inherited them. This would be, i.e., you grew up in church and mom and dad or grandma or grandpa or aunt or uncle or neighborhood friend brought you to church and the pastor said, yada, 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 and you grow like this. My job is not to make you regurgitate Jason Bedell's faith. My role and my calling is to help introduce you to the one who changes lives and does the miraculous, and then you and I will go and sift through the details of what that means. But for some of us, we grew up in that, and then we are just leaning into what mom said. Here's a clue. And my mom goes to this church. She's not in this service, I don't think so. Mama ain't always right, okay? I know that's scandalous. Some of you would get backhanded for saying that. But will you lean into your own faith? Parents, are you teaching your kids to lean into their own faith or your faith? Because when they leave for college, 95% of kids that are of faith then walk away because they were leaning into whose faith? Yours, not their own. So he paints this picture. He says, faith is not primarily a function of how you feel. I went to church and it felt really good. There are tons of things that unfold in the account of the Bible where I go, that did not feel very good, God. I don't really like that a whole lot at all. And that is not the primary function of faith. Faith is living out and believing what is true despite what you feel. Now, I'm not negating the fact, like when we sing Great Are You, Lord, I was like, whoo, hashtag all the feels, okay? Like I'm sitting there, I'm hearing you guys and singing whatever, but my faith, your faith is not about how you feel. There are some days where the last thing I want to feel is like, woohoo, me and God, we're in this together. There's days where I'm like, God, I am not really your fan today. I'm frustrated with you. Hearing the news of a fellow forefronter and friend and watching what happens and then watching the family take place, knowing that his wife died just a few years before that, so he's raising kids on his own, and then he dies, and so these kids are getting enveloped in the rest of the family and having to deal with that. There's big questions where I don't jump up and go, this is a good day. Do you leave room to wrestle with the doubt? And that's okay, because it's not about our feeling, it's about what is true. And that's why faith is so important, and all these things that could send us away and send us off kilter. That chapter in Hebrews, jump over to verse 6 and continues on. It says, and without faith it is impossible to please God. We talk about, well, I got to show up at church, I got to show up at small group or whatever. It's interesting. When God talks about the things that please him, that bring him joy, it's our faith, the things that cement us together with him. Because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists. That's faith. Saying, I cannot see you, but I watch your movement. I want to do that, and rewards those who earnestly seek him. And then he starts talking about the people that honored him in their journey. He says, by faith, Noah, this guy that built a big boat because the earth got flooded, he said, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear built an ark to save his family. By his faith, he condemned the world and became heir with righteousness that is keeping with faith. He said, listen, you trusted me when everybody else ran. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. By faith, he made his home in the promised land like a stranger in a foreign country. Basically, God, you just told me where to go and just go, and you didn't give me any plans. For some of you, that would drive you nuts. It would be like your GPS going, the only thing it's going to tell you is the next direction, not the time, not the destination, anything else. And you go, GPS, I want to know, and it goes, tough luck. And this is what God is doing with Abraham and moving through it. A stranger in a foreign country, when he lived in tents and did as Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him in the same promise, for he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. And by faith, even Sarah, and it says she was very old, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful who had made the promise. In all of this, it's trusting in God and saying, God, you are the one that knit me together. You are the one that did all of these things, and I'm going to trust you in all that you do because you are good. And even though things don't always go the way we want, I didn't get that. God, I'm mad at you. God, this didn't take place. You are mean. God, I don't understand you, and therefore I'm upset. If you take out God and put mom or dad, it sounds a lot like a toddler. And I'm not trying to shame anyone, because this is, I can look in the mirror and say the same things, where I get frustrated, and then I look up at God, and God's like, for real? You want to play this game? You right now? You want to do this? Because let's talk about this. Because there are moments where my story, the way I think it lines up, and the way God's story for me line up, and I wrote it down this way, that being faithful means not giving up when God's story for your life doesn't match yours page for page. When we oh God, I got a plan, and then when we could go to him in prayer, or we could talk to him, or we have this idea, and we kind of give it to God like, I know you're a big God, but here's kind of a blueprint, because I'm pretty good at this sort of thing, because it's like my life and stuff, and so let me give it to you, and it'll be really good, and God's like, oh, that's so cute. It's like Roxy telling me that she's going to harness a unicorn. It's like Chloe telling me she's going to live in a tiny house in my backyard, and I'm going to flip the bill for all the stuff. Because they have a plan, but their plan is not enveloped in God and in their faith. And so they're running on their own merit, their own ideas, all of their other things, and they're going to run on that, and that's childlike and that's beautiful, but at some point we grow up. And we go, what is it for you and for me that allows us to envelop our lives in such a way that everything is foundationally faith, day in and day out, page after page, and we go, God, I had a story, but you have a better one, and I'm going to trust you. But I'm scared. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand, but I wonder how many of us day to day in moments have been scared of the future. Our big idea and our takeaway would be this, is that feed your faith and your fears will starve to death. Feed your faith in community in this, and reading your Bible and praying to God and surrounding yourself with him. Feed your faith, And you and I will watch our fears dissipate and starve to death, put our fears on hunger strike as we feed into the faith that God has given us. Some of these things is I've been trying to learn over, the last couple decades of trying to follow God and make sense of all this. One of the truths that I found out is that the will of God will not take you or I where the grace of God will not protect you. The will of God and the way that he moves in all these things, in death, in regret, in family, in reading the Bible, in love, and in all this stuff, in our happiness, all these things that fill up our existence of life, that God is not going to take us places where his grace and his mercy will not be with us. That scripture reference there in Psalm 139:7, unfolds it this way. It says, where can I go that your spirit will not be? Where can I go that your presence will not be with me? That in every moment, in every existence, as we follow him and we cement and anchor our lives in this journey with him in faith, that God is moving with us and he's teaching us as he's enveloping those things, even when things get hard and they sometimes don't seem to make sense. And then we get to this other place where we ask a question of, am I moving in God's plan? I hear people, once they start to follow God, I just want to move in God's will. Here's what I found out when people say that. I really want to make sure that God's will matches up with that thing that I handed him. And I'm not shaming anybody. I make all kinds of plans, all right? My wife would disagree because she's the planner, and I'm just like, yeah, whatever. But in my head, I make all kinds of plans. I follow through with little, but I make all kinds of plans. And I kind of hand them over to God. I'm like, all right, God, here, let's test the waters here. Let's see. And it feels like God just kind of takes them and he puts them on the fridge with the unicorns and the tiny house. It's like, let me talk to you about what's true. And I want you to know, because I doubt this sometimes in my own life, is another piece of this, is that you're exactly where you're supposed to be in God's divine plan. That as you're walking through this, in that verse there in Proverbs, it says that man lines up his steps, but it is God who directs his path. It is God who directs your path and moves in that. And you have the sheet of tinfoil there. That I always apologize to our greeters because I hand them the weirdest things, and I give them the hard job of looking at you seriously in the face when they do this, and they're like, you're so weird. And I'm like, yeah. You don't have to live with me. Pray for my wife. I want you to take that, and this is going to be fun because most of us are too cool for school and we don't want to do stuff. I want you to take it and put it on your face and make a mold of your face. You're like, right now, some of you are like, Jason, I am not doing that mess. I'm not doing it. None of us are too cool, and so we can put that on there, and I'm not going to do a bunch of it because I already pre-made mine. And so do it the best you can and mold your face. Once you get a decent mold, you can't see what I can see. This is so funny. This is Mystery Science Theater backwards. And so take off your little thing as you kind of push that on there and you see. And so I made mine here. It's sans beard because I couldn't quite get that together. And as you can look at yours as the best that you've been able to make it. You would say that is an image of who? You. That's an image of you. I would look at this and I would say, yeah, that's about right. It's got the crooked nose. It has a little bit of the butt chin. Yeah, it has the furrowed brow and everything. That minus the manliness that is a beard, that is me. But the truth is that if I were to hand this to somebody else, and you don't have to do this because then you would have whoever's breath and stuff in it. If you hand that to somebody else and they put it on their face, what's going to happen? It's going to change the image. It's going to change who it is. Many times we get wrapped up in our faith journey thinking that we're the ones, that we're the center of what happens. And the truth is even though that I would say that this is an image of me, that each and every one of us are made in the image of God. That we are simply a resemblance of the Creator. That this is not, for all intents and purposes, this is not Jason Bedell. This is Jason, who is a child of and made in the image of God. And as I and you, and we walk out this faith journey, and we think about how we're made and what we're made up of and all the experiences that we have, and we look at each other face to face, may we walk this journey out in such a way that we can see that every single person, whether they believe the same way, whether they're older than us or younger than us, whether they look like us or vastly different, that we can see that they're made in the image of God and they too are on a faith journey. And the one thing that can bind us all together is the absolute beauty and love of God. May we look and know our identity and know that it's cemented and rooted in God and all that he does, and that it's our faith as we feed that and push our fears away, and hopefully our goal is that we would starve them out as we move forward with him. Why don't you guys pray with me?